Worship is a matter of life and death. What did I say? Worship is a matter of life and death. God gave me a revelation this evening, and let me share it. Genesis chapter 22. Just a few minutes before our daddy comes up, I'll be doing this. Genesis 22. From verse 1, and I'll read. And after these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. He said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I shall show you. So Abraham rose up early in the morning, saddled his donkeys, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes. And saw the place afar. Then Abraham said to these young men, stay here with the donkey, and I and the boy will go over and worship and come again to you. Now my question is, you are going to kill somebody and you are calling it worship? Can you imagine? The first place worship was mentioned, it was talking about going to kill. That means in the place of worship, it's either something is coming alive or something is dying. Now listen, when you worship, 2 things happen. It's either your flesh die for God to rise in your life, or God's presence die for your flesh to live. Now I begin to ask myself so many questions. Listen, I judge people's pride level in the place of worship. I judge people's, it doesn't matter if this is the first time you are entering a church, so long as it has to do with worship. There are people that even if it is their first time, if they enter here, once it is worship, you can even lie down. It's not a matter of this is my first time, let me see how they do it. No, I judge people's pride level in the place of worship. Now once it has to do with worship, let me tell you, God rejects worship. If God doesn't reject worship, why did he reject Cain's sacrifice? If he doesn't reject worship, now what happens in the place of worship? Why, I ask God, why is it that in the place of worship some things don't happen to certain people? He said it is because they kill my presence for their own flesh to live. And let me tell you guys this thing. God doesn't work with your flesh in the place of worship. He interacts with your spirit. In the place of worship, God doesn't need distraction. He enjoys it like an intercourse. Just like a husband and a wife are making out, that's the way God enjoys it. So once there is a distraction, you are killing him. I want us to have this understanding. There was once pastor told me on Wisdom Z when we came here, said, you need to tell the church how this thing works for you. Now listen, when you see God's presence taking over the atmosphere, it's an interplay of so many things. It's an interplay of, first, your spirit. It's an interplay of, second, the instrumentation, the sound. God deals with sounds. Now it's also an interplay of crowd response. Then completely it's an interplay of who is leading. So when you come to the presence of God and some things don't happen, now it's not a matter of knowing how to sing. I have heard good voices. Listen, there is something called oil. If you like, use strings and play and you have a good voice, if the oil is not on your head, nothing will happen. There is something called oil. I don't know how many of us, it's not a matter of you knowing how to sing do re mi fa. Like I said, God deals with what? Your spirit. How many of you say, our daddy, I'm sorry to say this, pastor doesn't have a good voice, but why is it that when he sings, things happen? that some people have the voice, they know all the music, they know everything, but once they sing, you see this dryness. Papa said something this morning, I'm sorry to say it again. He said, whenever I sing, there's something that happens. Now, I made mention of so many things that plays on when worship is going on. I didn't start today. Now, when I say God doesn't deal with your flesh in the place of worship, there are some times I do a lot of nonsense, and whenever I still pick up the mic, things happen. I begin to ask myself, God, so you did not consider that thing I just did? I will now hear a voice. I'm not dealing with this your flesh. There is something about your spirit I love. Now there is something called game changing. God, there are some worshippers God calls game changers. The question is, are you a game changer? It's not about who is leading. Whenever worship is going on, I see people looking at, some will look at AC, it's not working, some will look at this one. A lot of distraction happens in the place of work. A lot of distractions. Then at the end, once they ask you, where are you coming from? I'm coming from worship and healing service, but nothing is happening. Thank God today is worship and healing service. Thank God the opportunity has been given to me to say this. But our attitude towards worship must change as a church. Rehoboth Center is a worship center. We don't joke with worship here. But please, I want us to understand something. For things to move in that your business, you have to be a worshiper. I did not say a singer. You have to be a worshiper.